everybody, and welcome to the Rocks and Roots podcast. We are extremely lucky because this is the second guest we have had on now in 2 weeks. I'm very proud of us. So I am Tumbles, and I'm looking at the screen at
Cranky, and we are fortunate enough to be on the Zoom with Greg Calabrese of Rip Van Winkle Adventure Guides. So Greg, if you remember from our previous episode, offers guided adventures from short day hikes, extended high peak adventures, hunting, kayaking, whatever you like. Most of his trips focus on the Catskills region. And Greg, you caught our attention at the end of 2022 because you recently completed the Catskill 9. So did I miss anything in your intro?
No, that all sounds just about right. Yeah, I like to focus on the Catskills because I've spent the better part of 40 years running around them, and I just really enjoy them. There's a lot of beauty there, and that's why I tend to try to focus on one area.
Fantastic. So have you lost count, or do you even bother keeping track of how many summits you have of each peak?
I don't even bother keeping track. I've completed a few rounds of the 35s, but it's not really that high on my radar to keep track. So I just enjoy going up, and every time I summit the same mountain, it's always a different experience. There's always different light. It's a different day. It's different weather. So it never gets old. I never get tired of it.
Winter versus summer summits, it's like a completely different mountain, even though you're doing the same mountain. So definitely understand that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Are you doing anything this weekend?
I am guiding a woman and her dog up Wyndham High Peak on Saturday.
Awesome.
And that should be pretty good. The weather's been going back and forth, kind of iffy, but it looks like it should be a pretty decent day out. And then Sunday, I am guiding a group of folks for their first time in the Catskills around Catskill Falls and the North Lake area.
Wonderful.
So that's pretty much, if it's your first time here, you're pretty much obligated to see Catskill Falls and the surrounding area. So it's
that's hilarious because it took us years to get to that.
It's true. That was one of the most recent ones we've done, I think.
Yes. So let's talk about the Catskill 9. So for those of you who don't know, and Greg, you can correct me if I get any of this wrong, it is a 22.7 mile loop, including Table, Lone, Rocky, Balsam, Cap, Friday, Cornell, Peekamoose, Wittenberg, and Slide Mountains.
Yes. Yep.
Fantastic. So you caught our attention because I saw on Instagram you had posted that you led a group, and I was like, I don't know what the Catskill 9 is. So we reached out, and you just want to start by giving us an overview. I think you've done 2 rounds now at this point.
I have. I've done the 9 a couple of times. Not as many as some other people out there in the hiking community that seem to be doing it like every other week. But I've been through there plenty. It's you're right about the mileage. It's somewhere between, GPSs are all different. I've gotten it, sometimes it's closer to 18 miles. Sometimes it's more like 20.
It's like devil's stuff.
21. So yeah,
sure. Yeah.
It's and depends on how much weaving you do in between. So if you hike like a drunken sailor, you're gonna add mileage. But yeah, it covers 9 of the Catskill high peaks, either in a day or take your time and do it as an overnighter and enjoy a nice night in the woods as well. Most of which is bushwhack, so trailless hiking, so navigating through the forest from peak to peak without the benefit of a trail. although most of these peaks have been summited so many times now that the herd paths are fairly prominent to follow.
Right.
Especially now in the wintertime with a little bit of snow on the ground. And, it's a lot easier to see tracks. But I've gone through it in all the seasons. And even in summertime, you can still see the remnants of where people have walked, if you know what you're looking for. So it's a lot of... sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no. Finish what you were your thought. Sorry.
It's a lot of map and compass, but it's more almost like tracking, being able to see where people have walked before you have and try to follow their footsteps. And knowing that those footsteps are going in the right direction.
For sure. Do you know how the Catskill 9 got its start? Who came up with this challenge?
I have no idea. It was on my radar several years back, just looking for ways to piece together a lot of the peaks in one trip, and I would say that's probably most likely how it got started.
Right.
With somebody else also looking to maximize their day out and get as many peaks in as they could. And it became a challenge from there. And over the years, when I first heard about it, it was not very well known. But now over the years, it's becoming more and more known, thanks to a lot of the hiking pages and apps like Fall Trails and things like that. It's becoming more and more of a dominant challenge from what I see. I see a lot of people on social media are attempting and completing the 9 as one trip.
Well, I could definitely say that a lot of what we need to finish Crank are on that list.
Yes. So, were these guided trips, and did you do one day and like your second trip an overnight? Like, how did you break this up amongst the various times you've done this?
The first couple of times I've been through it, I was through it just helping my friend Jason Pelton completing his challenges, his hiking challenges, and just going along with him for the ride, so to speak, an extra set of eyes and a little bit of motivation. It's easier to motivate each other to keep going than it is if you're out there by yourself.
Definitely.
The trip that that I put this on your radar was a guided trip. I had a client of mine that was interested in doing it, and he didn't want to do it in a day. He wanted to take his time and do it as an overnight trip, which mainly I've done it as a day. So this was actually my first time is doing it as an overnight, because usually I just go right through it and do the loop in a day, and then I can come home.
How long of a day is that? Because 22 miles, 9 peaks. If we tried to do that Tumbles, we'd be out there like 17 hours.
Basically.
So how long?
It's definitely a long day. It's on average for me, it's about 12 hours.
Oh, okay.
To do the whole thing, to do the loop. I know other people do it faster, other people do it slower. But for me, it's about a 12-hour day.
Well, there's crazy fuckers that when we did Devil's Path, there were people who were trail running Devil's Path.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. Do you see any of that out there?
Yeah. A lot of what I see lately, it's a lot of trail runners are doing the 9, and it's just the next evolution in the challenges of trail running the Catskills.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
insane.
So when you did this guide trip, where did you camp?
We camped in between Cornell and Slide. In the there's if you look on the trail conference maps, there's some primitive campsites that are set up throughout. And so we started at the Denning trailhead, the Phoenicia East Branch Trail, and we hiked that to Curtis Ormsby and summited Slide Mountain as our first mountain. And coming down the other side of Slide, there's a spring about halfway down and about a quarter of a mile or so away from the first set of campsites. So we figured we would fill up all of our water that we needed for the rest of that day, and to get us through the next day, we filled everything up and brought it with us to where we picked one of the primitive campsites that was off trail a little bit and seemed like a nice spot to hang a hammock and set up a tent. And we dropped all of our gear there, set up camp, and then decided to continue on and do Cornell and Wittenberg, only carrying small day packs, and then coming back to camp for the evening. So between Slide and Cornell, almost summiting Cornell is one of the last campsites towards Cornell, is where we decided to camp for the first night. And it was about 11 miles for the first day.
So you did cut it pretty much in half.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I should have done this before, but I'm just looking at the all trails, and there's a peak on here that I have never heard of. Dink?
Dink.
Yeah, I've never heard of that one.
It's not a high peak. It's just one of the Catskill sub peaks that actually has a name. Not a lot of them do, but this one does. And it's basically just a small bump between along the divide, the Catskill divide. It's just a small bump between Cornell and Friday.
Okay.
As you're hiking it, you don't really notice very much. It's not like you're gaining a lot of elevation to get up and over it. Mm-hmm. But it's a beautiful area through there. If you've never been, I highly recommend it. It's not well traveled. I mean, there's no trail that goes over it. It does have some amazing vistas that aren't normally seen by everybody because they're pretty far off trail. But it's a great section of forest, and I've enjoyed every time I've gone through it. I've found something new every time.
That sounds really cool. One of my favorite parts of doing the high peaks, particularly the Catskills, is once you reach your primary elevation, just any plateau up in that area is absolutely gorgeous. And that sounds like a really cool spot that I should have looked at before we started this interview, but I'm glad I learned about it now.
I wonder why they call it Dink.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
We shall look that up.
So, go ahead.
Yeah.
There is, and I was wondering if you had seen it on any of your trips, there is a B-25 bomber that crashed on Friday Mountain in 1948. Have you been to that site? Have you seen the wreckage?
I have not seen the wreckage of that site. I have it marked on my map and I know where it is. I just every time I'm hiking up Friday in Balsam Cap, it's usually a secondary thought, and I'm on my way back down, and it's just like, I'll get it next time. And I have not seen it. I've seen photos of it. It looks pretty amazing, and I know it's scattered over several hundred feet of the mountainside.
Yep.
Yeah, imagine having this plane see action in France during World War II and then crashing here.
Right. From what I've heard of the crash, I believe they thought they were following the Hudson.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes.
And they were actually flying over the Ashokan Reservoir.
Yeah, it was a training run. They hit bad weather. They attempted to land at Stewart outside Newburgh. Yeah. They weren't heading to Newburgh. They were heading towards Kingston and the mountains. And they slammed right into it. So how far down is, because the wreckage is scattered like down the mountain. How far like off trail, how far down the Friday is it?
It is, well, from the summit of Friday, it's about 1,000 feet down. It's the wreckage is roughly between 2,500 and 2,700 feet.
Okay. And let me look. Friday is 3691. So
Yep.
Yeah, you're taking a bit of a detour to go see this. Not that we are encouraging people to go bushwhacking and find wreckages. We'll leave that for us.
Do that in the summer. Don't do that in the winter.
So, what was the most difficult part of the loop? Or in your opinion, what is the most difficult part? And I would imagine that changes depending on whether you're by yourself or leading a group.
Well, the most difficult part of it is is maintaining the endurance to do it. It's definitely physically and emotionally demanding, being that the bulk of it is off trail hiking. That plays a lot on your psyche, going through either by yourself or with a group, especially if you're with a group and that group is relying on you to get them through as the best way possible. So there's a lot of thought that has to go into the bushwhacking section, and constantly checking your compass and your GPS and landmarks while you're in there. So I would say that's probably the most difficult portion of it, is just maintaining the right mental attitude.
Do you require, groups that you take up there? Do you require any prerequisites for the group? Like, you have to at least be able to take a compass reading, or you have to be in, X physical condition, or do you just take like first timers if they want to be crazy?
I generally try to make sure that people have at least some sort of experience with long days.
Okay.
Whether that be doing doing the devil in a day, which is, it's longer than this, but I think that this is a little bit more difficult than doing the Devil's Path.
There's more peaks.
You're on trail the entire time with the Devil's Path. There's really no thought process. You can hit points where you're basically just sleepwalking. So I do try to make sure that if I'm taking people through, that they have the physical ability to make it, to be able to carry themselves over that kind of a day. I don't generally try to take first timers out on things like that, just because you're pretty far out there as far as the mountains go, and getting any sort of help should anything happen.
For sure. I mean, have you had any experiences with people who had frozen up or got worried or?
Not on this trail. Generally, most of the times I've been through here, it's just friends and I that are coming through. I've taken a few clients through it, and they've been in the physical shape to be able to handle that sort of thing. But I have run into my own problems on the 9 on one of the attempts in early spring, which was still winter-like conditions. I slid down a slope at about mile 9 through the loop and smashed my knee into a stump, and had to make the decision to limp my way out the remaining 9+ miles back to my car, simply because there's really no way of anybody getting out there to help you. And I just refuse to be a search and rescue statistic.
Kudos.
So I slowly, it was an excruciating rest of the day, but made it to my car, just as it was getting dark. I actually ended up only summoning 8 mountains because by the time we did trail, I decided that the side trip to Peekamoose and back just wasn't worth the effort. So I started hiking down back towards Denning, and my friend Jason, who I was with, went on and did Peekamoose and caught up with me, and I wasn't even halfway down Table yet. And it was just a long, slow limp back to the truck, and I was really happy to see that parking lot.
You made the right decision, I think.
This is why we love having you on, because you have the best trail stories. Like last time you told a story about, compound fracture and a helicopter rescue.
That's right.
So, what, you just lost your footing, or was it icy, or?
It was icy. It was still, it was almost more winter-like conditions than we have winter right now. So it was very icy. I was on a steep slope between Lone and Rocky, and I was wearing microspikes, but I turned around to do something, and I didn't plant my foot, and my spikes slipped, and I slid down the hill, and the only thing that stopped me was the tree stump.
Oh.
So was it broken or just badly bruised, or?
Badly bruised, twisted a little bit, just very painful to walk on. It took me a few weeks of rehab after that, and some much lesser hiking to get it back into shape. Wow. But it was definitely not broken.
Okay.
Just one of those injuries that's gonna end up, you're either staying the night, getting yourself out that day, or calling for someone to come find you.
Right. You mentioned that it was more of a winter in the spring than it is now. Do you have any snow up there?
We barely have anything. Most of the trails are bare right now. Maybe a few small patches of snow, but nothing. Yeah, it's cold. Well, it is today. It's been like 50 degrees for the last week.
It's January 11th, folks. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's insane. The creek and the river here in Catskill are pretty much ice free. That I've been thinking about going kayaking because I'm just like, well, there's no ice. Might as well go out. And the weather's been nice.
That's incredible.
You're sitting around and 50 degrees out, and the creek's just staring at you. And you just want to get the boat in.
Go do something, right? Exactly.
We've switched from hiking to running for 2023, and it's been great having these 50-degree weekends.
Oh yeah.
You guys had that huge storm though in December. Like that didn't obviously stick around if it's 50 degrees.
Did it even hit you?
Yeah. Well, here in Catskill on the river, we didn't get hit that much, but okay. Tannersville, which is only 20 minutes away, Tannersville and everything at higher elevations got hit pretty good. The high peaks of the Catskills ended up with over 2 feet in most areas.
Yep, that's great.
Yep.
But then we were immediately followed by well above freezing temperatures, both day and overnight lows, and a lot of rain.
Okay.
But they're still skiing on Hunter, right? They're still making snow.
They are still making snow. As long as they can get snow to stick to the mountain, they'll keep blowing it.
Awesome. Let's go.
I was going to say, if those trails are clear, let's
go.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I've seen several reports of the Devil's Path, and people who have done the 9 over like the last week have all said that they've bare booted pretty much the entire day.
Wow.
That's insane.
Just carrying microspikes in their pack.
All right.
Definitely no snow to even think about wearing or carrying snowshoes at the moment. So
shorts, trail runners, let's go Tumbles.
Okay.
Pretty much.
What is the most pleasant part of the loop in your opinion? Like when you're out there, you're like, I can't wait to get to this section.
The section where we camped, I really love the section of the Burroughs Range between Slide and Cornell.
Cool.
It's such a beautiful, old, first growth, untouched section of forest, and it's just I don't know how to describe it. It just feels Jurassic at points. Like you expect, if you're gonna see a dinosaur, that's where it would be.
Sweet. Like Jurassic Park Dominion, right, Cranky?
Yes, the greatest movie. No, that movie is awful. It's the worst movie ever. That's funny that you mentioned that, because obviously different range, but similar conditions a lot of times. In the Adirondacks, we summited Phelps, and we were looking out, we were like, this is just like Jurassic Park. And as we summited, we were playing the John Williams theme, and it was hilarious.
Nice.
So, anything else you want to mention about this loop before we move off and start talking about some other things?
I would just say that for people who are looking at this to do as a first time, to definitely get all the information that you need beforehand in order to do this loop, and not go into it just because you saw it on All Trails.
Yes.
It's definitely not. It's not the most difficult hike in the world, but it's also not the easiest, and it shouldn't be taken lightly, especially in certain seasons. In the summertime, there's no water. There's only one spring on Slide, and that's pretty much about your only chance to find water across the Neversink Bushwhack Range. So from Friday over till you hit the trail by Table, there's really no springs through there either that I know of. I'm sure if you want to lose a whole lot of elevation, you can probably find some water, but it's definitely a hike that everyone that's interested in doing it should get all the information beforehand and know what they're getting themselves into.
For sure.
And any time you are doing a bushwhack, map and compass, know how to use it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Even if it's not your dominant use of navigation, you should know how to use a real compass and a paper map and have them in your pack at all times. I generally tend to rely on my phone. It's 2022. Mm-hmm. I don't navigate by the stars. So I embrace technology. But I also understand that technology can break down, and you need to know what you're doing as far as having a backup plan. So actual compass and map are usually my backup plan. And I navigate using mostly the Avenza app with the trail conference maps on it. It's a great tool.
Avenza.
Can you talk about that? This is the first time we're hearing this.
Oh, okay. Well, the app is Avenza. It's a map app.
Can you spell that?
Avenza. And you can.
I just want to write that down.
Oh, okay. You can purchase maps from all over the world and utilize them on the digital platform that this app is. And it has the brand new 2022 versions of the New York, New Jersey Trail Conference maps for the Catskills. So it has the most up-to-date map set, and it's basically you're looking at a digital version of the paper maps.
Very cool.
So it allows you to zoom in. You can, like any other GPS app, you can set waypoints and trail markers. Even the navigational features through Avenza are amazing. From everything that I've messed with them, you could pretty much drop a pin on the map on your next peak, and it will give you a compass bearing on where you need to go. It will actually, if you have the battery power and you want to use it, it will actually guide you. via a red line that shows up on the map. So no matter which way you're off from your bearing, it will always adjust for you.
So you would suggest this over all trails?
I would absolutely suggest this over all trails.
Okay.
All Trails is a great app to find hikes, and a lot of times their difficulty rating seems pretty accurate. I think their times are off that they list,
and the mileage.
The mileage is usually always off too. I think their timing has. I think it's probably a lot more trail runners.
Yeah.
That are posting. So the average times seem quite fast when I look at stuff on there, and they give you the average of, like this trail should be completed in 3 hours and 47 minutes. I always whenever I look at those, I'm like, who's going that fast?
2 hours.
So All Trails for the Catskill 9 says hard, which is accurate. 12 hours, 20 minutes. So that's about what you did it. So this one, for this particular trail, it doesn't seem that far off. But we've been out there and we're like, what is going on? It's been off by miles for us on other trails.
Right. Yeah. Well, it's a crowdsourced app. So sometimes it's difficult for accuracy because it depends on what people are using to track their mileage and time. And then it just gets recorded to the All Trails. So it's, I think they generally just take an average of the tracks that are on there.
So our next Adirondack peaks, whenever we get back to that, are going to be Street and Nye. And some shameless self-promotion. If you go on our TikTok, I did a tutorial on map and compass using Street and Nye to get the bearing. So when we head out there, we are going to now also use Avenza. That sounds really cool. Thank you, Greg.
Oh, you're welcome. Yeah, it's a great app. I use it for a lot of stuff too, not just the Catskills. I use it to pull up maps for hunting and things like that. Because you can find any map that's available in their map store, you can purchase and have it downloaded. So I use it for a lot of stuff.
So is the platform free and then you purchase the maps, or is the platform a subscription as well?
It's both. You can use it. I use the platform for free and purchase the maps, but you can go pro and pay for a subscription.
Yep.
It gives you a few other details that you can use that it just doesn't appeal to me to have to pay for yet another map app.
Yep. Gotcha.
No.
So it just beats taking the physical map with you.
Right. Which I carry both anyway.
Right.
And, but as far as it goes, even for me with it being free, it works just great.
Cool. Well, thank
Perfect. All right, so let's get into some other things that we didn't get to the last time we had you on. What is your most requested or most popular adventure for Rip Van Winkle, your company?
I would have to say probably hands down it's Catskill Falls. It's it's one of the most popular attractions in the Catskills. So I do get a lot of calls for people who just want to see the falls, don't know the area, and want to just be taken around and shown some beautiful sights. And it's also one of the most accessible locations for all skill levels. So it's generally one of the biggest places I go to.
And then you also do high peak stuff and kayaking, as we mentioned. So call Greg up if you are wanting to go to the Catskills.
Yeah, any outdoor adventure, I pretty much do. So,
what has been your most unique request?
Let's see, most unique request. Hudson River Island camping by kayak. Out here off off of Catskill in Athens, we have a few small islands that are state owned, so they're open public land, and we do a lot of kayak camping.
Oh, how fun is that?
So it's a lot of fun. It's almost like car camping. The amount of gear that you can carry on a kayak or canoe and get out and do some camping along the river. It's really cool. You can take a lot more stuff than backpacking, and it's just a fun day to be out on the river. And the islands have their own wildlife and stuff that live out there, and so it's really cool.
Oh, that sounds great.
What unique wildlife are on those islands that you don't see on the mainland?
Not really anything unique. It's just the islands do have their own populations of deer that live on the island.
Okay.
And Rogers Island, which is underneath the Rip Van Winkle Bridge, if you've ever driven across that over the Hudson, it's the large island that you look down on as you're driving across. Rogers Island actually has bears that live on it.
No kidding.
Yeah. Huh. And I've seen turkeys out there, but mostly a lot of deer. They walk across when the river's frozen.
Oh, of course.
Or they get across when the tide goes out and the channels are a little bit narrower and they can jump across them. And then they tend to stay out there because they're not bothered and there's plenty of food.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Nice. All right. So we didn't get to the first time we had you on your huntings, and that was one of the things we had on our agenda and one of the reasons why we wanted you to come back. So I'm assuming deer is the most common game, but what else? You just mentioned a couple things that you could hunt. Bear, turkey. What is your primary game, and then what else have you hunted that might be unique?
Primary game that I hunt are white-tailed deer and wild turkeys. That's primarily what I hunt. You can also hunt. You can hunt black bear here. Okay.
There's no time period like in New Jersey, correct?
Well, there's a
season.
There's hunting seasons for everything. So, there's certain times of the year where you can hunt certain animals, and then other times of the year you can't. I don't personally hunt black bear, just because I've had several run-ins with bear all around the country, and I've walked away from every single one of them unharmed. So I believe in keeping the karma going, and I won't hunt bear for myself. I don't have a problem with taking someone else to an area and they can choose to hunt one, but I don't generally do it. I mainly hunt deer and turkey. But then there's small game and game birds, so you can hunt rabbits, squirrels, which a lot of every time I mention squirrels, people are like, really? Squirrels are actually quite delicious to eat. They're pretty good. And there's a lot of game birds in New York State. We have quail, we have pheasants. I'm sorry, not quail, grouse, and pheasants, and of course waterfowl, ducks, geese, things like that. So there's lots of stuff we have out there that we can hunt.
What do you use for equipment? Bow and arrow, rifle, both?
All of the above. I'm predominantly a bow hunter, so I choose to use bow for just about everything, except for duck hunting. Although I have seen people hunt ducks with a bow and arrow before.
That's just nuts.
I'm not at that level. That's some pretty good shooting. Yeah. But I will use bow for deer. I will use bow I have taken wild turkeys with the bow before. And I've gone out and attempted rabbit hunting with the bow, but they're pretty quick.
It's quick,
and you got to be on the ball. So it's a little tough, but mainly bow. And then I'll use shotgun for duck hunting.
And so have you been hunting your whole life?
No. I grew up around in a hunting community. I mean, there's a lot of hunters here in Catskill. I had a lot of friends who hunted when I growing up here, but my family didn't hunt, so I wasn't really that big of a hunter. I wasn't against it. I just wasn't. I didn't grow up in a family that took us out hunting. And then probably about 15 years ago, started watching what goes on with our food and industrialized farming, and realized that I should probably start learning the skill of hunting and hunt for my own meat.
Good for you.
So I try to get a deer every year, and that pretty much holds me over from having to buy red meat at the grocery stores.
And on your Instagram, I saw some venison chili mac that looked absolutely amazing.
Oh God, it was delicious.
So do you process it yourself? Do you take it somewhere to be processed? How does that part of it work?
A little bit of both. Over the years, I've done my own processing, where I've hung a deer up and, you quarter it and debone it and get all the meat and everything, and then process your own stuff. It's very time consuming. So I found that it's easier for me to go to some of the local farms here that do deer processing during the season, and you drop the deer off. You can kind of pick and choose how you want cuts and things like that. So you can get steaks and have some of it ground or however you want. Generally, I end up getting most of it ground up, so it looks like ground hamburger. And then I small batch process my own stuff from there. So I'll make small amounts of homemade sausage from that, or I press burgers with it and eat a lot of what I call burger steaks, because I'll press them so they're about an inch thick.
Big. Yeah.
And sear them really fast in a cast iron pan, and hit them with some gravy and mashed potatoes on the side.
Oh, we're coming right over. That sounds great.
Oh God, it's some of the best. It's some of the best food you'll ever eat, and deer is one of the leanest meats that you can get. High in protein, but very lean, little fat. Really good for you. And of course, the best thing to make is, since you have it all ground up, is to just make tacos.
Nice.
So, I do a lot of that. A lot of my camping trips involve venison tacos as a first night meal. Mostly, for multi-day trips, the first night is always nice to be able to pack in some real food to cook. So, because you don't have to worry about it going bad on you in the first day. You just take it frozen and let it thaw out in your backpack as you're hiking. So I make a lot of venison tacos out by the campfire.
Great.
Awesome. That sounds amazing. So Tumbles mentioned in New Jersey, we have a lot of laws. New York also has a lot of laws. I'm not sure. I think our respective governments compete, and we know that they work in tandem to see how many restrictions they can place on firearms and hunting and various things. But so what are some specific laws in New York State for hunting that people should know about, or that you find kind of restrictive? One of the things Tumbles mentioned is in New Jersey, we have a bear hunt for the first time in years, and it caused a bit of a controversy in our state.
Yeah, I heard about that. I was unaware that for years you weren't allowed to hunt bear in New Jersey.
We overhunted them.
Ah, and now they're
Now
overpopulated.
they're eating out of the garbage cans.
Yes.
Right. And becoming nuisances in Harriman State Park and places like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You gotta love when they label them nuisance bears, though. They're just being bears.
Yes.
It's the people who made them a nuisance. They taught them where the food was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Let's see. New York State. We do have a lot of laws. One of the laws that the DEC passed for hunting a few years ago was antler restrictions for deer hunting. So they placed restrictions on the size of a deer that you could hunt, basically by judging it by the size of the antlers. A small immature buck would be known as a spike. It usually looks like a goat. It's got two horns sticking out, not like the usual deer racks that you're used to seeing in mature deer.
Right.
So in order for New York State to try to get more mature deer in the herd, they placed antler restrictions on a lot of the counties and wildlife units in the southern tier of New York State, which basically means, from what they did, was you can't harvest a buck that it has to have more than 3 points on one side. So a point is any spike in its antler that's larger than 2 inches. And so generally deer antlers grow the same on both sides. So 3 points on one side was basically a way of saying that you couldn't shoot anything smaller than a 6-pointer. Yeah. So, which is, for a deer to get a rack that size, they're usually over 2 years old. So it's helping the herd and getting a little bit more mature deer and larger deer. It causes a lot of controversy in the state. There's a lot of people that don't agree with it, and there's a lot of people that do agree with it. I agree with it to the point where I generally, in my hunting, I try to pick mature deer out of the herd. I don't like to shoot young deer. Number one, they're smaller, the younger ones. So you don't yield as much meat from it. So I don't see it as a necessity to have to shoot something that's not going to fill my freezer. So I like the antler restrictions to the point where, people, it makes hunters have to think a little bit more and know what they're shooting at, as opposed to just going out in the woods and shooting whatever walks by.
Those that disagree with the restriction, what is their argument? We are fair and balanced on the Rocks and Roots podcast.
Well, let's see. Their argument is, as they like to say, you can't eat the horns, even though deer have antlers, not horns. So they're basically saying that they're not. They don't call themselves trophy hunters, so they're not trying to get a large trophy buck.
Okay.
And they just want to put meat on the table, and and also that
limits their options.
Yeah, it limits their options. People don't have a lot of time to hunt. You might be limited with the time that you're out in the field. So there's arguments to both sides of it. I just think if people adopted more of the thought process of just trying to harvest more mature animals, we wouldn't need the state to step in and with regulations.
Right. I can understand both sides, actually.
Yeah, I see both sides of the argument as well.
I totally agree with you. You might as well look for a bigger buck so you can have more food.
Right.
Yeah.
And also, where the county that I live in, the buck to doe ratio is it's very low on the buck end. You have probably about 15 doe to every 1 buck.
Wow.
So that kind of eliminates the need for bucks to fight for breeding rights over the herd, because there's tons of doe out there.
Right.
So the way I look at the antler restrictions is that in tandem with the antler restrictions, the state should hand out more doe tags so we could harvest more does for meat. Since if you're just trying to fill the freezer, so to speak, and put meat on the table, why not shoot a mature doe that's past breeding age and let the younger doe move up in the herd and become the dominant breeders?
That makes sense to me as a non-hunter.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, that it seems logical. I can't claim to have any firsthand knowledge, but that definitely seems logical. So,
are there any restrictions with turkeys?
No, there's not.
I wouldn't think so.
Not any that there's not any that I would think to talk about, other than the fact that they don't turkey season has 2 seasons. So we have a spring season and a fall season. Mm-hmm. So spring is when the turkeys mate. It's their mating season in May. Mm-hmm. So that's when the toms you'll see them puffed up and they're doing their best to attract the ladies. And it's a really exciting time to hunt. But in the fall, my biggest gripe is that turkey season ends well before Thanksgiving.
Oh.
And you would think it would run through to Thanksgiving. I mean, it just seems that there would be nothing more American, so to speak, than to wake up on Thanksgiving morning and go harvest a wild turkey and then come home and cook it for dinner.
Yeah.
But you just have to be out there weeks before and store it in the freezer.
Okay.
That's about my only gripe with the state regulations for turkey season.
Okay. That we are just about out of time. Is there anything else that you wanted to share? Any cool stories that you could think of, or anything about your company that you wanted to share? Just anything that we missed in our outline?
I had a question actually about your bear experiences, because Cranky has been dying to see a bear for about 6 years now, and I'm so sick of hearing him talk about I want to see a freaking bear. Can you tell us some of your bear stories? Okay.
I will tell you my favorite and scariest bear story.
All right.
Awesome. This was in Arizona. I was hiking in the Superstition Mountains in a canyon called Fish Creek Canyon, and I'd gone there. It was pretty much my go-to Saturday morning. I would go hike there every weekend, and I was hiking out there one weekend, and it was probably late spring, so the weather was nice. It wasn't super hot. This trail has a lot of pools of water. And I was playing around. I was deep, probably about 6-7 miles in the canyon. And I was playing around in a pool of water, just kind of knee deep, splashing around. And I heard movement through the brush behind me. And I just kind of turned to glance. And I saw a black shape move through the bushes. And I was like, that's not somebody's dog. And I got pretty quiet. And the next thing I knew, a black bear emerged from the brush. Uh-oh. And I honestly didn't know what to do. So I backed up. I was in a canyon, and I backed up against the canyon wall. Now I'm knee deep in a pool of water. And I backed up against the canyon wall and just kind of stood there. And there was a small sandy area at the edge of the pool that I was in. And this bear turned and started walking towards the sandy area. And in the meantime, it hasn't seen me. It doesn't know I'm there. I have no idea how it didn't know I was there. We were so close to each other. And I watched this bear put one paw down in the sand, and then he crossed his other paw over it and began to start to lay down. And I was just like, all right, I can't sit here while this bear takes a nap. And I was going through like all kinds of things in my head, like, what can I do? I'm like, if this bear charges me, I guess I can scramble up the side of the canyon, 15, 20 feet and sit there until the bear gets bored and leaves. Like, what do I have? I had some like beef jerky I could throw at it if I needed to. So I ended up, I made a cough so it would know that I was there. And it looked up at me as startled as I was when I saw it walk out of the brush. And we stared at each other for what felt like forever, but it was probably only about 10 seconds. And the bear kind of turned its head and then turned its entire body and just decided to keep walking away. And I sat there at that pool after that bear left, shaking for probably about 20 minutes, and then decided to keep going further away from the bear and up canyon more, just to give it time to get out of the area. Right. But unfortunately, it had walked towards my Jeep. So the whole way back, walking back towards my Jeep, I kept thinking with being face to face with a black bear.
Greg, I'm so sorry, but the internet paused on me. So
oh, no.
Can you just repeat what you were thinking as you were walking back to your Jeep? I missed the punchline.
Oh, so the whole time I'm going back towards my Jeep, and there's a lot of, it's a canyon in Arizona, so there's a lot of boulders and scrambling. And every time I would scramble over a boulder, I kept thinking I was going to find this bear in a sandy spot taking a nap. Because I was like, that's what it was looking to do. But never saw it again, thankfully. But that was definitely the time that made me decide. I was like, I am not hunting bear. I'm like, if a situation like that where, I was pretty much had done just about everything wrong with bear encounters. They say never look it in the eyes. I stared right at it.
Don't back yourself up against a canyon wall.
Right. Don't back yourself up into a canyon. But I made it.
You did.
The bear decided to let me go. I wasn't a meal for it. And I'm thankful about that.
It was just tired.
So are we. So, I don't want to get that close, but I would still like to see a bear on one of these trails at some point before I get too old and broken to do this anymore.
Yeah.
We heard one in Georgia.
Yes.
And we saw one from the car.
Doesn't count.
Shut up. From the car in Shenandoah.
Nice.
I thought that counted. It doesn't count.
It doesn't count.
We were in a vehicle. It doesn't count. We were tourists at that point. So it doesn't. So I don't know, Greg. Does that count in your opinion?
It depends. How close was it to the car?
It was walking away from us.
It's like 30 yards.
Yeah.
That counts. I'm going to count it. I'm going to count it.
I disagree still. This is I will hopefully not die on because I don't want to get eaten by a bear.
Right. Well, the good thing is East Coast black bears are very docile and non-aggressive. The 95% of my bear encounters in the Catskills is seeing their asses as they're running as fast as they can away from me.
Oh,
I'd be all right with that. That would count.
So a bear butt. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Bang the trekking poles if make noise and they dart off, right? Mostly.
Yep.
Okay.
Pretty much. I'd imagine they smell us coming long before we ever even get close to seeing them.
And then the problem that Tumbles and I have is neither one of us are really light hikers. We sound like Bigfoot, and we were also usually talking. So if they've been in the area, they are gone long before we even are aware that they were there.
Yep.
So,
and it's amazing how something so large can be completely silent when it wants to.
For sure.
We did see in one of the moments that we shut up on trail, a kingfisher in the Adirondacks, which is apparently extremely rare.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yes.
That was an interesting moment. It was quick too. It was one of those, we looked at it looked at us, and then darted.
Yep. So, all right, before we head out, do you want to give all of your plugs? How can people book an adventure, get in contact with you, follow your Instagram so they can look at your amazing recipes, all of that good stuff?
Yeah, absolutely. You can email me and check out my website at ripvanwinkleadventureguides.com. You can follow me on Instagram is RVW Adventure Guides. And that's where you can see all my amazing wild game meals and some not wild game meals. I like to cook. And I'm on Facebook at Rip Van Winkle Adventure Guides.
Fantastic.
So you can message me through any one of those platforms, ask questions, ask about a hike, suggestions, or book a hike. And in the warmer weather, you can book some kayak camping.
Phenomenal.
That's wonderful.
You have the best stories, so at some point we should have you back on just to do a story
time
episode.
Yes.
Sure.
Story time with Rip Van Winkle Adventure Guides. All right, thank you so much, Greg.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much, Greg. If you wouldn't mind just staying on just for a moment after we get off with our lovely listeners. All right, y'all, Sure. It was a wonderful chat with Mr. Greg and talking all about the Catskills. He's a wealth of information. And if you are curious about what we are doing, which is not very much because we're running a lot lately, but Crank is cranking out some videos on TikTok. See what I did there? So, Crank, what have you been doing?
I just did speaking of cooking, Greg, I just did a Dutch oven Guinness stew recipe, which was absolutely delicious. I mentioned before that I did a brief map and compass tutorial on there using the Catskills Street and Nye as, a sample. That's what I used to demonstrate map and compass. I've rebuilt our first aid kit for our hikes, so that is on there if you want to know how to do a first aid kit that doesn't suck. I think before that I did knife sharpening, so skills, and then once we get back out there, we'll do some. I shrunk it down to 8 minutes. Our last hike, which we did in the Adirondacks.
Okay.
Is on TikTok as well.
Sweet. And you can find us on TikTok at rocks_roots_podcast, whatever. Find us, just put our names in. Find us also on Insta under the same name. Send us an email, same name at Gmail. We're not on Facebook. We don't like Facebook. So, all right, y'all. Thanks for listening. Catch ya on the flip side. Ciao.